All right, guys, welcome. About 10 minutes late. Apologize for that. Had some technical difficulties out back, but we got a good episode today. This is episode 3. We're going to talk a little bit about everything. We had the media poll come out. Clemson didn't jump as high as what a lot of people thought. Down to 10. We're going to show all that. We're going to discuss that a little bit. And we had a first-team All-ACC guy for the first time in, 2 or 3 years since Marquise Reed. Going to address that as well. 6 players on ACC first team, which is, not normal. Typically you have 5, but we'll give 6 participation. I'm all for a participation trophy. I got 4 and a 3-year-old, so there you go. Also, Ian Schifflin, the 3rd signee of this signing class for the Tigers, 21 kid out of Atlanta, Georgia. Going to discuss him a little bit. And then Tigers' full schedule came out. Non-conference is pretty difficult. Got some good games in the non-conference, including a couple of including a tournament and a neutral site game against Alabama. Should be interesting. Going to talk about, I call it the on-the-list group, basically 5 through 8. Like, they're not VIPs to where they can go right up to the club. They're on the list. They got to go up and they got to ask to come in. This is the next group. That's Tier 2 of the ACC. And spoiler alert, Clemson might be on that one. So that'll be good. We're going to just go ahead and start off. I thank you again for joining me. We're still dealing with a little bit of technical issues. Hopefully we can get it going real quick, and looks like we're ready to go. As always, I've got my man Faxon here. Faxon, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm glad we got started, man. I'm glad we got started.
Yeah.
So tell me, did you see the All-ACC teams for the first time?
I have not seen them, actually, so this will be my first time being introduced to it. I've glanced over them, but I haven't really looked too far into it per se.
Right.
So I'm glad to have this discussion and talk about what's going on.
Well, here's the predicted order to finish according to the media poll. I'm not sure I agree with a lot of it. You're going to go ahead and start out with Virginia, Duke, Florida State, North Carolina, and then this is where it gets interesting for me. Louisville, Syracuse, Miami, NC State. You guys have heard what I feel about NC State last week if you were able to join. I don't think they're going to be in the top 10 of the conference. We'll discuss that in a minute. Then we got Georgia Tech, Clemson at 10. Somebody's not doing their homework. 11, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Pitt, and the bottom 3, you might as well interchange the bottom. Faxon, what is your first thought when you see Clemson at 10?
I think that the fact that people think NC State's going to be higher than Clemson is just ridiculous. As far as a talent perspective, as far as a coaching perspective, and just thinking about it in general, that does not make sense to me at all.
It doesn't make sense to me either. And they do have good front court players. Let's not get this twisted. But at the same time, there is no guard play. Putting them at 8, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. Kevin Keats said the other day during his media conference, he feels like he really likes his team. I'm wondering if there's some kind of trick that I don't know about. I'm sure there is, but everybody's positive at the beginning of the season, so we can talk about that. This is another one, Syracuse at 6. I thought this was a little bit lazy, to be honest with you. Syracuse, your zone's not going to let you be great in this conference, especially when the game has changed where it's all shooters. They do have some good offensive talent, but Faxon, Carmelo Anthony ain't walking through those doors.
No, and I just don't. I think this is more of a reputation-based ranking than a logically-based ranking, because when you look at Syracuse, this roster is not as strong as it has been in years prior. They lost their best player from last year in Hughes, so Syracuse over Miami and Clemson to me is just lazy, as you said. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things too. I think there was definitely some tobacco road bias. I'm not going to, basically lie to you there. Media needs to do a better job, especially when it comes to NC State. There's no way. I'm sorry, there's no way. Clemson at 10, with the amount of people that Clemson's bringing back, this is exactly where Coach Brownell likes to be, if we're going to be honest about it. If you're playing over expectations according to the media, that's always a good thing. 10th, if you're a coach, you like that because, one, you can fire your players up. You know your team's better than that. You have a first-team All-ACC player in Amir Sims, which you can see right here. Big Amir reaches first team. I feel kind of bad. I had him at second team, Faxon.
Yeah, and well, obviously you said there's 6 players being named to the first team this year, so it's getting kind of weird. But I would say that all 6 of these guys on your screen right now deserve this bid, including Amir Sims. I know you had him as second team All-ACC in your projection. I think that's a fair ranking, but for him to get boosted up to first team, it's deserved based off the season he had last year and what the Tigers should bring to the table this year.
Well, he led the Tigers, as we said last week. He led the Tigers, every category. Points, rebounds, assists, and steals. Absolute stud for the Tigers last year. Are his numbers going to jump that much? That I don't know about because Clemson, one, is deeper. They're not going to need him as much. His minutes aren't going to be as high. I will say this. Chris Likes from Miami was picked first team All-ACC last year. Did he live up to expectations? No. Can he do that? Absolutely. but he's going to have to pass the ball a little bit more, Faxon.
Yeah, and we saw likes in those multiple games against Clemson. I mean, this kid is just ridiculous, especially for someone his size. He can shoot from anywhere in the gym, and he's not afraid to go at you and take it to the hole either, even though he is, 5'7"? So it's, like you said, I think playmaking and just kind of getting out of that tunnel vision, score mindset will be good for him. But I think Larrañaga and him can coordinate to where he becomes more of a floor general this year, as he is a senior. So got to learn how to do that if he wants to play in the NBA someday.
And Miami has weapons. I mean, let's not get this twisted. He has weapons around him this year, and hopefully they won't get hurt. Cam McGusty returns, Isaiah Wong, Harlan Beverly. He's got guys around him that can make some plays. Hopefully it can relieve some of the responsibility off of him. If he's able to do that and boost his assist numbers from 2 to about 4, that's going to be a significant difference. Right here, not a whole lot of people know right now. Scotty Barnes, Florida State, 6'9", 227, out of Florida. Spent his time last year at Montverde Academy, an excellent player. And I've talked to a couple of people around the ACC. They feel like he could give a running for freshman All-America and All-America team come towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with that. I mean, just natural talent is what comes to mind when looking at Scotty Barnes. And it looks like Leonard Hamilton's crew are going to have another really good year down there in Tallahassee. And, you know, you got to respect it, especially with how many guys they play, their rotations. Really impressive stuff out of them.
Well, his numbers aren't going to be astronomical.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone through this. We've
because
gone through all this.
They play too many players at FSU for a player, one certain player, to put up like a ridiculous amount of points per game.
Absolutely. He might be the most Florida State player in Florida State history.
Yeah.
6'9", able to guard everybody. They're going to play him at the point. With that kind of size at the point guard position, Anthony Polite's going to be in there as well. They have weapons from all over. And to be honest with you, Florida State's kind of weird. This is a first 5-star recruit since MJ Walker. They typically get guys under the radar. 3 players for Florida State come from JUCO. So for them to get a 5-star player of his caliber, a high-energy guy, he's not somebody that's overly skilled, especially shooting the ball, but he's somebody who can do a lot of different things. You can post him up. He can pass out of the post. He can drive and kick. Very versatile player. This guy right here, Sam Hauser, not a whole lot of people knew until about a month ago when everybody started talking basketball again. Transfer from Marquette, 40% career three-point shooter for the Hoos. He's going to have a great year. And one thing, he's going to have a major impact for Virginia because he's going to make shots no matter if everybody else is or not.
Yeah, and we've seen with Virginia when they've struggled over the recent years, like you said, it's shot making. They didn't have anyone these last couple of years that could really take it and score in isolation or get you a bucket when you needed one. It was a bunch of really good defensive role players that, you know, kind of got, like, especially Kay Clark, great player, isn't really a bucket getter that you need. Sam Hauser is just taking all of that pressure off of everyone on the court. He's going to go get you 15-plus points per game. He's just going to walk in the building and get you 15. And like you said, crunch time, you need a bucket, you're in a close game, that's going to be the guy. They're going to have to bring 2 people on him because nobody can guard him one-on-one.
And the perfect player, quite frankly, the perfect player for Tony Bennett, somebody who's a good screener and who's going to be able to pop back off some of those screen actions. I know Virginia plays slow. I know that you'd like to see a little bit more points. But even though Virginia's going to be scoring 45, 50 points, he's still going to get 20. This is a Player of the Year candidate right here for obvious reasons. He's also going to make an impact on other guys. Casey Morsell, a sophomore out of Washington, D.C., St. John's College High School, is going to have a much better year because Hauser's on the floor. This guy right here, preseason Player of the Year, Garrison Brooks, another North Carolina big who loves to crash the boards, Faxon, just pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, Garrison Brooks should have, and he was picked preseason Player of the Year?
Yes.
Wow, that's a little bit shocking to me that he was picked over someone like Jalen Johnson or someone like Sam Hauser for Player of the Year, but I do understand it. Phenomenal player. He's going to probably get you 15 and 10 a night minimum, so that's definitely deserving, but I really thought that the committee would have pivoted towards Hauser or maybe Johnson.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But you know what you're going to get with Brooks. He's not somebody who's going to do a ton from the outside. Hey, Roy Williams said during his press conference interview last night on ESPN, he thinks he's going to be able to shoot the ball from the perimeter. I don't see that happening. He averaged 16 points, 8.5 rebounds last year, and he's pretty good at what he does. Why take him away from it? You could easily get him up to about 17.5, 18 points a game if he's able to hit one top of the key jump shot. But he's somebody who needs to be in there crashing the glass. My only concern with his numbers, Faxon, is the fact that you don't have Cole Anthony throwing up 30 shots a game this year to where he can go climb on the backboards. Garrison Brooks, a good player, very good player. You know what he's going to be before the season even starts. He has dealt with injuries, but he's an effort guy. He's a guy that's going to get a lot of points around the rim. This guy right here, Jalen Johnson out of Duke, freshman out of, was it Minnesota?
Yeah.
A little bit of a jack of all trades, an excellent passer, not a great shooter. It seems like we're getting a lot of big point forwards here lately in the ACC, guys who haven't worked on their jump shot as much. This kind of falls into that mold. Is he R.J. Barrett? No. What he is he's a little bit like Scotty Barnes in that he's going to facilitate an offense. He's going to make good reads. He's going to be able to attack the basket with his elite athleticism. This is a pretty good group here. And then I'm going to talk about my biggest snub as soon as we do the second team. Oh, excuse me. Here is the second team, and I apologize for the technical difficulty right there. Second team, Jose Alvarado, David Johnson, Louisville, Wendell Moore Jr., Kihei Clark, Virginia, M.J. Walker. 5 guards. The year of the big man, it's gone. They're no longer here.
Interesting. And yeah, like you said, we had a lot of size on the first team, these point forwards, kind of that Ben Simmons mold with Jalen Johnson. So, I mean, you look here, I would say that all 5 of these guys are deserving of a spot, even regardless of their position.
I will say this. This guy right here hasn't proven enough yet to where he's really deserving.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. What did he average, 7 points or something last year?
Last year was an odd year, though.
It was an odd year. It was weird. He was playing alongside some other guys. Didn't get as many touches. Really I think he's more Andre Iguodala. He's not really going to show up on the stat sheets like you would want him to, but he's going to guard your best player. He's going to be solid on offense. He's not going to turn the ball over, but he's really good around the rim. So look for him to have a better year if he shoots it a little bit better, Faxon. This guy right here, Jose Alvarado, first team all-defense a year ago for Georgia Tech. Coach Passer's got 2 of the best guards in conference, Faxon.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, because I have a feeling you might bring this up, DeVoe is an absolute snub.
Yeah.
I was having a feeling that, and I think that you could put him over there over Wendell Moore Jr. That is the best, one of the best backcourts, if not the best backcourt in the ACC. And I know you're a big fan of DeVoe's game and Alvarado's game as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I like Alvarado. He brings a lot of energy to his team. 2.2 steals a game. Like I said, first team all defense. He's somebody who brings the energy and enthusiasm to this Georgia Tech team. Very deserving of a second team nod. This guy right here, David Johnson. Stats didn't show up, didn't really, jump off the page at you. A very good player at Louisville, pure point guard. They use him in a lot of different ways, Faxon.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see if he has more of a role scoring-wise this year with the departure of Nwora and a few other guys for the Cardinals down there in Kentucky. But I'm just really hoping he can take his game to the next level from a scoring perspective, as you said.
Right. Well, he's not necessarily a big shooter, but what the Cardinals do for him is he's able to attack off pick and rolls. He handles the ball against pressure. He's 6'5", 220 pounds. He's somebody who's not going to turn the ball over. He's somebody he's a plus passer, especially in the half court, operating off those things. And the Cardinals like to pass the ball off the wing and put him in the post and let him operate from there. A very versatile player, not a good shooter, shot 18% from 3 last year, could get better. Kihei Clark. This is somebody I would switch with Chris Likes. Is he as flashy? No. Is he more efficient? By a million. 11 points a game last year, 4 rebounds at 5'7", and that's a generous 5'7", Faxon. Not to mention 177 assists last year on a team that plays the slowest pace in the country.
Yeah, and we saw they won a national championship with this guy. Clark is just, he's the coach's dream on the court. He really is. He's a floor general. He's going to make the right pass. He's going to limit the turnovers. He's going to scrap on defense. He's going to hustle, and he's going to get you kind of in that 10-point per game range, but they're meaningful buckets. So I definitely could see the case for him to be on the first team, especially with the team that Virginia is, and especially because they were picked to win the conference. So you would think that they would be trying to throw 2 players in there, but what do I know?
Yeah, you would think they would try to put at least 2 on there. Last guy, M.J. Walker, Florida State. This is somebody who has been a main scoring option for the Seminoles over the past, 3 years. Not the most efficient player in the league, though, Faxon.
Yeah, he has some chucking tendencies for sure. Shot selection is very questionable to say the least, but like uber talented player and scorer. Just needs to kind of tone it down when it comes to contested shots.
Agreed. And my biggest snub, I've had Mike DeVoe, all ACC first team. How do you have somebody 16 points per game, 48% from the field, 42.5% from 3, 4 rebounds, 4 assists? The most efficient scorer in conference, somebody who definitely got snubbed. I think his proximity to Chapel Hill hurt him. And if he played anywhere closer to the state of North Carolina, he's a first-team All-ACC guy. I have him on my first team, Faxon.
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. And I remember at that Georgia Tech game last year, in that very last game of the season for the Tigers in the regular season, down the stretch, the Tigers could not stop DeVoe. He would get to that mid-range area, just an absolute assassin, and he's a menace to deal with on defense as well.
Yeah, just an excellent player all around. And he's a tough guard because, one, he's big and physical. He has a quick first step, and he's got better in pick and roll situations. He's somebody with he's a one-to-one assist to turnover guy. Could he get better than that? At that, absolutely, especially for his draft status for next year. But he's somebody. He fits the NBA mold. He's big. He shoots high percentages from three. Maybe not the most athletic, but somebody who's shifty and does a lot of different things off the dribble.
Yeah, he's definitely a very creative player, and I think that he could be a guy that has a chance to show out at the NBA Draft Combine and kind of catch people off guard. As you said, he doesn't play close to Tobacco Road. He kind of gets forgotten, buried down there at Georgia Tech specifically because they were postseason banned. So it's kind of unfortunate for him location, but excellent player nonetheless.
Yeah, I think Georgia Tech is going to have a great year.
I do too.
Old guards win, especially in the ACC. We're going to shift gears a little bit, Faxon. Those slides right there, brought to you by East Park Printing. Talk to your boy Randy Dipsey over there, Clemson, South Carolina, East Park Printing. They're the people who made this one. The magazine, Let It Fly, with T.O. presents the ACC Breakdown 2021. Make sure you get on the website, letitflywithtO.com. Purchase it. You get all the information you need. Worked a lot of time on it. It's worth the buy. Put in coupon code QUALK, and there you have it. 10% off. You can do it. Do that for me. Shifting gears. And when I say shifting, I'm going to Schifflin. Ian Schifflin of Loganville, Georgia, is the third and final signee for the 2021 class, the 21 class. A 6'8" power forward out of Atlanta, Georgia, Grayson High School, right there in the Midtown. A relentless rebounder, somebody who can stretch the floor from three, Faxon.
Yes, and Schifflin almost averaged that double-double. He was this close. He averaged about 9.5 points per game, 9 rebounds per game. Very efficient player all around. Limited three-point attempts, but he can put them up. 55% from the field, get around that 70% range from the free throw line. So that's very good for someone that's going to be at that power forward position. Not a liability at the line at all. And like you said, this guy's just he's going to bring toughness. He's going to bring rebounding. And on the same time on offense, you got to respect him from out there. So I think this is a really good get for the Tigers.
Relentless. He's going to be able to switch some things, especially because he plays so hard. This is a guy his motor never quits. This is a good get this is an underrated get for the Tigers. A little bit on the small side. Shoulders aren't super big, but he's somebody who, like I said, his motor never shuts off. He's an ultimate effort guy, played for Team Curry over the summer and really brought it on every possession. And you don't see that a lot from AAU kids anymore. Beat out Dayton and Virginia Tech for this kid, Faxon.
Yeah, and this is, like you said, this is an underrated get. I mean, Grayson High School in Atlanta, it's kind of known more for a football school. You don't get a ton of basketball players coming out of there, but this guy is definitely a good find. And the fact that he chose us over Dayton is really just, especially after the year they had last year, it's just a testament to Brad and his recruiting job that he's done so far. Just keep bringing him in.
And here's the thing, too. I did Kwak's show earlier. We talked a little bit about Clemson's middle linebackers where it's like, well, you're not getting these five-star kids all the time. This is a guy that fits. This is a guy that's going to be able to knock down a good amount of threes at a high clip. I think by the time he's done, we're looking at a 33 to 38% three-point shooter. And I think we got a question. Is that right, Faxon?
We do have a question from Hart Rayleigh coming over on Facebook. If you guys aren't tuned in on Facebook, go tune in. He says, which Tiger do you guys think will be the most improved this year?
That's hard because Chase Hunter didn't play a lot last year. If he's healthy, now, Coach Brownell said yesterday on his media call, Chase Hunter's been dealing with a broken finger since September. If he's able to come back and he's feeling healthy, I think he's a guy that could explode and jump off the page. Another guy that I think, he played at about 60% last year, and he gave Tigers all he could. He just didn't have the ability because he didn't have that explosion that he usually has as Clyde Trapp. I think Clyde Trapp could definitely have a good year.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with those two shouts. I would say Jonathan Bear as well, if he can get healthy. I've heard he's dealing with some knee issues as well. Obviously, he's coming back from injury, and he's kind of the Chase Hunter clause, is where you didn't see a ton of him last year. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a cop out to say he's going to be the most improved. But I definitely think Trapp will have a much improved year after really a full almost year and a half to regain that athleticism in his knee. And you know Trapp's always going to bring it on defense, so that's always a great thing he can provide.
Well, this year, too, because the depth is better, Clyde's going to be able to play off the ball more, which is where he's more comfortable. At times last year, wherever he was having to handle the ball, he would hang on to it a little bit too long. If that ball's pitched ahead to him in the flow of the offense, Clemson's a lot better.
And we do have another question coming about Clyde Trapp from Keith Red over on YouTube. He says he's curious about the two spot, and do you anticipate Trapp to play less minutes this year due to the guard depth, and do you think he will be the primary ball handler at any point during the game?
I think there's going to be times that he helps out because Alamir Dawes last year, when he was most comfortable, was when Clyde was on the floor. However, if Clyde doesn't shoot the ball better, I don't see how in the world you keep him on the floor.
That's also part of this question he was talking about, more elaborating on about how it's never great to have the guy that's playing the two not be able to shoot. So I do agree with you and him from the perspective that Clyde needs to do a better job of shooting the basketball this year. And I think that'll come more with, there won't be as much pressure on him. I mean, he was coming off of an ACL tear. That's a really, mentally, that's just a weird thing to come off of. And he did have that game-winning layup against Syracuse last year. So.
Well, to go along with your point, the depth is ridiculous. I mean, you look at Nick Honor, he's able to come in. He's going to play a lot of minutes, and I think he's going to become a fan favorite for the Tigers. 5'10",
he's awesome.
230, just an absolute beast.
Yeah.
Like the guy looks like a JV linebacker, but he's out there pressuring full court. I think a lot of people are going to like Nick Honor because he's going to be able to shoot good percentages, and he only had 4 turnovers during the trip to Italy a couple of years ago when Tigers took home the gold medal. Yeah,
and I remember just being devastated that Nick could not play last year after, if you remember, there were some eligibility concerns because he did play so well in Italy. And I think that if we're talking about not most improved, but kind of a Tiger that's going to burst onto the scene this year, it would be Nick Honor. As you said, the depth is going to allow him to, I think he's probably going to get upwards of 20 minutes per game. It's just going to depend on what looks Brad is going to want to have with him and Amir on the court at the same time. How do you think those could coexist?
Well, Brad said already, like, they're going to be able to pressure the ball more. I think you're going to see the defense elongated a little bit, at least past half court, because Nick Honor and Amir can both pressure the ball. Those are two players that can get up there. They can be pesky against opposing point guards and start to force some turnovers instead of having to retreat back like we've done the past couple of years. 2 years ago, Shelton Mitchell couldn't move. You had to come back. You couldn't pressure the ball. A year ago, there wasn't enough depth to have guys come in and frequently go in. I think it's entirely possible that Amir Dawes goes from, I think it was 26 to 27 minutes down to about 21, 22, and you're able to rotate more guys in. You're able to keep the pressure up. Thank you for the question, guys. Was it Keith and Hart?
It was Keith and Hart, yes.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate it a lot. Guys, you have any more questions? Make sure you type them in, man. I'm trying to answer all of them. There's a lot of stuff going on, including the Tiger schedule came out.
Yes.
The entire ACC slate came out 2 days ago, as well as the pre-conference has finally been let go. And Faxon, have you seen it yet?
I have glanced over the schedule, and I have really paid attention more to the out-of-conference schedule than the in-conference schedule because we know who we're going to play in conference already, but I think you've actually got some graphics prepared for that.
I do in a second. If it's acting up on me today, Faxon, it's acting up on me.
It's all good. But Clemson does start against Mississippi State, I think, in the out-of-conference schedule in that tournament or bash or whatever they're calling it?
Yeah, it's the Cancun tournament, and I'm extremely disappointed because I was about to fly down to Cancun, but apparently you can't go to Cancun in a worldwide pandemic. That's not a plus. But you are starting off in a flurry, and I think this is a big thing. There are no scrimmages this year. You're not scrimmaging teams behind closed doors and finding out what you really have and who you can play against high-level competition and who you can't. You're going straight out into it against Mississippi State, a team with frequent talent, a lot of really quick guards, including Ian Schiffel's high school teammate Devin Smith, point guard for Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Yeah, and I think this Mississippi State game is going to be a great game to kind of gauge what the Tigers can bring to the table for the season. And I think you're about to move into this next. If they do win that game, they're going to get the winner of Purdue and Liberty, is it? So I really hope that Clemson wins this game because I would love to see them play more than likely Purdue because I think that would be a great test for the Tigers. We saw last year in the preseason game, Clemson really showed some grit and some nails. Coming back on TCU, was it? And then should have beat Colorado in the finals. They were ranked at that time, but kind of went cold late in that game. But this is just going to be a really great gauge to see, number one, what are the rotations going to look like? Like, what's Brad's mindset going into the season? Starting lineup rotations, all that jazz, and hopefully they can get some hardware for winning the Cancun tournament. That would be awesome.
That would be big time. And the Cancun tournament's actually been moved to Northwest Community College up in, I want to say Pensacola. I don't think they're going to allow any fans or anything like that, so we're good there. But tough test. You get them, you play Purdue. You don't. Liberty's a very underrated mid-major team and with a heck of a campus, and that's a building program, something that's kind of been brewing for a long time. Won their league, I believe, last year. Is that right, Faxon?
They did.
Like that? All right, we're going to move from there. Got a home game against South Carolina State, HBCU in the Palmetto State. This is a tune-up game. This is a game that you're trying to get your guys a lot of minutes. You're trying to see who else can perform after hopefully 2 wins here.
Yeah, this is the Presbyterian game from last year. It's the same concept. This is where you're going to empty the bench. You're going to see what you got, and I really hope that Chase Hunter gets a ton of minutes in this game if he doesn't in these first couple because I feel like this could kind of be his coming out party. He had a pretty good game against PC last year if I'm not mistaken, so hopefully he's healthy and ready to go and can put on a show in these first couple games.
I want him to be good against Mississippi State.
Yeah, I'm hoping that he gets the minutes and his finger's healthy enough to where he can get 15, 20-plus minutes against Mississippi State and Purdue if they were to win.
Yep, and you look at After the South Carolina State game, you're going straight into ACC Big Ten Challenge. Maryland's pretty good. They're not as good as years past, but they got Jarris Hamilton, transfer from Boston College, a really good player, transferring over to the Terrapins. This is going to be a good test. And I'm really, to be honest with you, I'm a little salty that they don't get to play up there at Maryland. I think that's a great venue. It's one of my favorites, as we spoke of last week. But a good team, good guards, should be interesting. Mark Turgeon's a heck of a coach. It's going to be a fun game to watch, Faxon.
Yeah, and this is going to be interesting because Clemson will play Maryland and Alabama in the span of like 3 or 4 days. So it's going to be, I'm hoping for 2-0. That 2-0 is the goal. But I think that Clemson will beat Maryland if I had to take a prediction early on. I feel like this just feels, the fact that Little John is huge.
Yeah.
If they were playing at Maryland, it would be a little iffy.
It'd be tough, yeah.
I think the spread on the game, I think Clemson might actually be favored in this one.
Really?
I really do.
I'm not big, I don't know spreads and stuff until like the day of. So
Yeah.
that's something I'm going to have to get better at. But
Yeah.
Maryland's a good team. And then they're going to move on to Alabama. Nate Oates has got Alabama playing fast as lightning. Top 15 team in the country in pace. A team that pushes it up right away. Tigers going to be, they better be ready to play, because if they get caught on their heels, it's going to be really difficult for them to stay in front of Javon Quinterly, a Villanova transfer and former McDonald's All-American, Faxon.
Yeah, that game is going to definitely be played in the 70s or maybe even 80s, just because Alabama forces you to play at their pace. You can't really slow them down. Like you said, top of the nation in pace last year. This will be a good game for the Tigers to kind of learn who the main scoring options on the team are going to be, because, like we said, Alabama's a bit shaky defensively, but they don't really care about that. They're trying to go. So this should be a test for the defense and kind of a wake-up call for the offense, who's going to step up into that role.
Yeah, that's a good point. South Carolina, I did have ... South Carolina is going to be played, I believe, on the 19th. Prior, it's going to be in Columbia. This is another one. A.J. Lawson came back, correct?
Yes.
Frank Martin, hard-nosed defense. Who knows how many players are going to have healthy, because he practices the heck out of them. This is a hard-nosed team, once again, with quite a bit of talent. Is Keyshawn Bryant back?
I think that he might still be up in the air.
Yeah, so who knows?
We don't
This is
even
a team,
know.
I'm struggling to keep up
The
with
personnel with their team is always in and out. That's just how Frank is. But Clemson's kind of got to have they got to have a salty taste in their mouth last year, losing at home to Carolina. And I'm hoping that this is kind of a revenge game. I think the Tigers have a better roster than the Gamecocks this year, though I think they also did last year, but it didn't really matter. This needs to be a win. This is really could be a win to kick you off into conference play. It's over an in-state rival, and this game always it doesn't have major tourney implications, but it has major rivalry implications. So this needs to be a win for the Tigers.
And it's the only rivalry game this year because there's no football.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to be tuned in. This one right here, we're going to talk about Morehead State. This could be a trap game right here. Preston Spradlin does a nice job up at Morehead State, including having guard from Dorman High School, P.J. Hall's old teammate, Taylon Cooper. Bunch of guys who can play on that team. Some crafty guards and quick. If they're able to shoot, they could give the Tigers a run for their money right before Christmas when guys are ready to go home, Faxon.
Yeah, and this screams Yale-esque trap game from last year. It's about the same time in the year, and Clemson, dropped that game to Yale at the beginning of last year. I'm just praying that everyone's healthy for the Tigers. It should be a win, but even we saw that game against Colgate last year get a little on the rocks, and this Morehouse State team can play. They can definitely play. Keep it competitive. Morehead State. Yeah, Morehead State.
Morehouse is in Atlanta, right?
Morehouse is in Atlanta, yes.
Yeah. No, it's a good team. It's a good team. They have good guards, and they have, if they're able to shoot the ball, it's taken, Spradlin was an assistant at Kentucky. It's taken him a while to kind of get comfortable being a head coach. It's definitely a team that Tigers don't show up, they could be in for a dogfight right before Christmas. Breaking down the conference schedule. And this is kind of brutal, facts, and I'm not going to lie to you. You got a ton of away games, and your home games in the first 9 are not easy. Florida State at home, Virginia at home. So you start out Virginia Tech, Florida State at home, and then you go away at Miami, NC State, North Carolina, and Syracuse. That's tough sledding to start out your conference, especially when those two right there are your home games. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know who at Clemson pissed off the ACC scheduling committee, but it's not looking great for the Tigers at the beginning of the season, like we said. Virginia Tech away is the first conference game of the season. Clemson dropped their first conference game of the season last year to Virginia Tech at home. I think Landers Nolly had like 33 in that game.
And he's gone, thank goodness.
He is. We don't have to deal with that this year, but we did get swept by them last year, unfortunately. And then you bounce back at home to FSU, beat FSU at home last year, gave them a good fight on the road. I think that game's going to be close. Can't mark that up as a win for the Tigers, in all honesty. And then these next 3, we go into Miami on the road, NC State on the road, and North Carolina on the road. 2 out of 3 would be awesome.
Right.
If you can beat NC State and UNC or one of UNC.
That's at UNC, so that's going to be.
Yeah.
If we're able to get 2 in a row in Chapel Hill after 100 years of not being able to get one, that would be interesting. This could be a possible win. And the more I think about it, you got a young point guard, Scotty Barnes. I don't think people realize how valuable Trent Forrest was. Like, sure, Leonard Hamilton goes 15 deep. That's a given. He's going to play everybody. Guys aren't going to have inflated numbers, but this is beginning of the year. Guys are just getting their sea legs in. You lose your 3 top scorers in Vassell, Trent Forrest, and what's the kid's name from Charlotte? He's getting drafted in the first round, 6'7". I just had a brain.
Yeah, I'm blanking on him too.
Yeah, I'm blanking on him. Doesn't matter.
They lost 3 starters.
They lost 3 starters in their top 3 scorers, so excuse me about that. Patrick Williams.
Yeah.
So Pat Williams is gone. This is a possible win. They are optimistic about their chances. They've got a lot of good players like they always do. Virginia Tech, we're a little bit more equipped to guard them this year with our ability defensively, especially our versatility with some guards being able to switch out. Miami down there, there's going to be no difference between a COVID Miami down there or a regular Miami down there because fans aren't there anyway. So there you go. So if you could get, I'm sitting here looking at all these. This one's going to be tough, but it's winnable. This one's going to be tough, but it's winnable. If you're able to get 4 out of the first 9, you might be feeling pretty good come the back 10.
Yeah.
So after these first 2, you got at Cameron Indoor with no fans. There's not going to be anybody there. And then you got Carolina at home. And they're talented, don't get me wrong, but they're still going to be extremely young outside of Garrison Brooks and Armando Bacot.
That could be a possible win, especially if Clemson loses that first matchup. It's always hard to beat a team twice. No matter the sport, no matter the situation, it's difficult to beat the same team twice in 2 years. We saw that with FSU last year as they came down to Clemson, they lost. I don't want to chalk that UNC at home game up as a win, but I think it's a Florida State game to the extent of Clemson might be able to catch some inexperience off guard. And like we were talking about earlier in the show, they've got so many different guards that they can throw at you that can defend on the ball. I think that's going to cause an issue for a lot of these ACC teams that have young guards.
Yeah, and 6 out of your last 9 are at home. So if you can squeak out 4 games out of that first little bit, you're going to be okay. It's a very favorable schedule, and it's a schedule that could give you some serious momentum going into conference time. I like the way this trends, especially towards the back half. You got Pitt twice. Wake Forest is going to be a rough one. They're going to play hard. They're just not going to be talented enough. And then you have Miami at home. Depends on if they wake up or not for the game. And Miami is going to be a lot better, a lot tougher this year, especially with Nysier Brooks. I could see Clemson pulling off 4 out of 5, potentially 5 out of 5. But just like that, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. I just like the way the back end of this ACC schedule rounded out.
The back end really laxes up for the Tigers, and especially these last 8. I think there's a possibility the Tigers could win 7 of their last 8 in conference. Probably won't win all 8 because you're bound to drop 1 or 2, but 7 of the last 8 going into that tournament play and potentially NCAA tournament play, it's going to look really good to the committee that Clemson's hot, and it's going to look really good going into the tournament. Maybe you get that higher seed, get a more favorable matchup because of the conferencing on the back end. Yeah.
And I was thinking why there were so many road games at the beginning, and it makes sense if you're the ACC. Why? Football season's still going on until middle of January for the Tigers. That's an easy one. So that's something you can add in there. If the Tiger fans can hold on for those first 9 games and we can get 3, 4, maybe 5 wins out of that, you're looking at a pretty favorable back end of that conference schedule. I'm looking forward to it. I do have some bad news, Faxon.
What is that?
The Ivy League just canceled, like just now.
Really?
They just canceled winter sports. Ivy League's not going to be playing. And the reason I'm worried about that is because they were the first ones to cancel their conference tournaments. Now, they also canceled fall sports, and we just continued to do that. So I just hope this doesn't start a precedent for everybody else.
Especially because of the reputation, everyone at the Ivy League schools are very intelligent. So I'm hoping that
Especially much smarter than us.
Oh, yes. And I hope it doesn't snowball like it did with those conference play. I mean, Clemson was on the court against FSU ready to play.
Yeah.
And the Ivy League called it probably 20 minutes before tip, and then you saw everyone just start canceling.
I was there.
You were there.
It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I was there covering it for TigerNet. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen.
It did not sit well in my mouth that they gave Florida State that trophy.
I mean, I get it.
It just did not. That really. They came into the day expecting to play the game, and then they go out and being deemed the champion. That was a tough pill to swallow because I thought Clemson might have won that game.
It's a really tough pill to swallow, and I'll tell you what's also a tough pill to swallow. I just wrote a magazine. And I hope they don't cancel basketball season. Selfishly speaking. We were talking about schedules, and there's a couple of schedules in conference, especially the non-conference, that I wanted to point out. Faxon, We talked a little bit last week. Jim Christian's on the hot seat. Have you seen Boston College's non-conference schedule? Because I'm about to read it off for you. Have you seen it?
I have not seen it yet, so this is raw reaction from me.
Okay. So, open up against Villanova, neutral site game. That's a tournament. After that, it's the winner or loser of Baylor and Arizona State. That'll be interesting. After that, you're playing St. John's at a neutral site. St. John's is rapidly improving under Coach Anderson. Rhode Island, which is one of the best mid-major programs in the country year in and year out. At Minnesota.
Dude, they're getting crushed.
At Minnesota. Syracuse at home. Cal at home. NC State. That's all before New Year.
I don't see a lot of wins in there.
It's entirely possible.
It's
entirely possible they go ahead and
on the show last week that probably the most probable way he gets fired is if you go like some drastic number under 500, and that non-conference is setting up perfectly for like a 6-win season or something embarrassing.
Jim Christian must hate the city of Boston.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it's about, but I called up there. I was like, hey, what's going on? I was like, I talked to a source of mine, nobody on staff, but a source that's familiar with the staff up there. And I was like, well, what's going on? He's like, well, they've been scheduling the Dartmouths, Columbias, Northeasterns, and those schools have been keeping up with them and sometimes beating them. So we don't want to absolutely bruise our guys' ego with those games. If we're going to lose, then we're going to lose games. I don't know. I'm not following the logic, but we're going to lose games we're supposed to lose, and hopefully we can catch 3, maybe 4 of them. I don't see one that you're favored in. No. Maybe Rhode Island at home. Maybe.
But you know how they play down there. I mean, we've seen them in the NCAA tournament make runs, and they get good recruiting. They get these 2- and 3-star guys, and they'll work them up. Like, I'm sure they always have 3 seniors starting, so they definitely will have that again this year.
And they'll have quality ACC transfers.
Yeah, and you got depth there too. It's just I don't see more than 2, and that's being really generous. Like, maybe you get Cal and Rhode Island, maybe, but I don't know
that you get Cal.
Yeah.
That's Mark Fox over there, former coach at Georgia, who's an excellent X's and O's guy. He's much better on the West Coast. That's where his recruiting ties are at. That's Parker Fox, walk-on Parker Fox at Clemson. That's his father, and does much better on the West Coast. I don't see how you win that game.
No.
Now, Jim Christian's a great coach, but there comes a point, man, like he's jumping in the fire, like cannonballing into it. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
It's not good for the Eagles, and it's not good for Jim Christian.
Brutal for the Eagles. Did you see Notre Dame's?
I want to say that I saw they're playing like a couple really high-level opponents as well. Maybe do they get Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken?
Okay, so you want me to run it down like we did?
Yeah, you can run it
down. All right, so this is Notre Dame's schedule before January. At Michigan State to open. Western Michigan, which is it's kind of a South Carolina State game, but they've had some scores in the past in the MAC conference. Tennessee at home, Ohio State at home, at Kentucky, Duke at home, Purdue at home, at Syracuse, at home against Virginia. Like, I don't know.
They're getting. I mean, we were complaining about Clemson's schedule. These guys are getting hammered.
Yeah. I don't know. Mike Bray came out and said, we just figured we'd go all out. We'd get the guys' eyebrows raised. I was like, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like they scheduled Howard at Howard on Martin Luther King Day, and that's not something to look over. McCord Maker, a top 10 prospect, committed to Howard. So this is not like some gimme game in the middle of conference
season. And they've got
season.
some other recruits over there, too. They've got multiple 3- and 4-star recruits that they've been able to bring in with McCormick. Maybe if this was last year and they had Mooney and they had all those reinforcements, I'd be like, okay, they can still maybe get into the tournament, but this is going to be bad. They're going to lose Tennessee, they're going to lose Ohio State, they're going to lose Kentucky, and they're probably going to lose Michigan State as well. I just don't see it.
Now, they can't shoot. That's like the big caviat. Like,
this is
teams
Boston
that can
College.
shoot. Yeah, teams that can shoot.
Maybe they get a hot night against one of these guys and keep it close and squeak out a win. But when you're just looking like comparing on paper the rosters, it's looking ugly for the Irish.
Yeah, and they have talent. Don't get me wrong. And Prentice Hubb's from D.C., so he's going to be happy to go back to Howard and play. But it's going to be a tough one.
You're playing like multiple top 25 teams in the span of like 2 weeks. Most of them on the road. So it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, strong pivot. That's what we're going to do right now. We're going to go straight into the on-the-list guys. What's the on-the-list guys, you ask? You ever been to a club and you walk up and the VIPs, they just walk straight in through the rope? The on-the-list guys are the guys that are right behind that. They are on the list, but you got to check and make sure first. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about it. Georgia Tech, right behind my right shoulder, your left, is pretty good, Faxon.
Yeah, and we've talked about this multiple times on this show about their backcourt, and their backcourt is going to carry the team. They lost James Banks from last season, senior, graduated. Guy killed Clemson every time they played him. I always am of the stance of saying I can't name the last time Clemson won a game at Georgia Tech, so I'm not looking forward to playing that game. And these guys gave the Tigers really trouble last year. I mean, they beat us twice.
I think the last time they won was when Gabe DeVoe went nuts down there.
Yeah, that was literally it's probably been
That was
4
when I
years.
was still a GA, I think. That was 2 years ago. 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
So they've lost, and obviously last year was probably one of the worst shooting performances I've ever seen from the Tigers down there.
Yeah, and they didn't defend. It was almost like they were sleepwalking.
It was
and
a
they
lazy
needed that game. They
needed that game to make the tournament. They did, and that's why I was disappointed with the effort. But it's a new year.
Yeah, it's a new year. Positive vibes.
Yeah.
Positive vibes. We're going to go straight into, we already talked about Jose Alvarado a little bit, but just to rehash on my man right here, 2.2 steals a game. He's the energy. He's the emotional leader. He brings everything that Coach Pastner likes to do. He sets up the offense. He's not overly effective in the half court, but he leaves that for this guy. Mike DeVoe, first team All-ACC snub. I don't know how we missed it. 16 points a game, like I said earlier, 42% from three, 42.7% from three. 4 boards, 4 assists, somebody who can carry his team if he gets hot. And here is a wild card. I'm going to talk a little bit about Jordan Usher. 6'7", 213, a transferred back home from Southern Cal. A good player, extremely athletic, was woefully inefficient from the field last year. Faxon, do you have his numbers?
Yes, he was 40% from the field and 24% from three last year. Not the best.
Not
on 8
optimum.
points a game.
Yeah, not optimum. But he's very versatile.
He's got room to grow, and he does a lot of things on the court. Senior, so he's going to have extra motivation coming to this year. Now, if we're just talking about looking down the future, Georgia Tech's going to be terrible. They're going to be a catfish team next year.
Right.
Their 3 best players are all seniors, and they lost Banks from last year, so this is kind of their last go at it to make a run at the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be honest with you, he could be a heck of a third option, but that's exactly what it is. If he can shoot up near 35%, Georgia Tech's going to be even better. This is your wild card right here. Rodney Howard out of Atlanta, Georgia. He's from right up the road, and he transferred from the University of Georgia. Didn't like playing for Tom Crean, apparently. This is the guy that the Yellow Jackets need more than anybody. Why do you ask? Because James Banks III was highly underrated. And I'll tell you why. These two right here will gamble on defense more than I care to even talk about. They're reaching for steals. They're getting out of position. But they could do that last year. Why? Because James Banks was back there blocking everything that moved. If Rodney Harrison can do that, they're going to be able to play that high-risk defense that they've been playing for the past couple of years, and he's going to be a solid guy who plays the middle part of that zone for Georgia Tech, and hopefully he's going to be able to protect the rim, Faxon.
Yeah, and just an interesting stat from last year that is in this Let It Fly with T.O. magazine. You can get it at letitflywithtO.com, if I'm not mistaken.
That's it, letitflywithtO.com.
So you got this stat right in here on the Georgia Tech page. Opposing guards, or opposing players in general, shot 28% from three last year against the Yellow Jackets. So we said these guys can gamble. A lot of times it pays off. You're forcing people into some really difficult looks. So it's interesting to see if Harrison can be able to step up into that role that Banks played and kind of be able to cause, because I know Clemson had so many turnovers in both games they played against the Yellow Jackets last year. It was ridiculous.
Right.
So if he can step up into that role, you're looking at NCAA tournament bound for the Yellow Jackets.
I don't think there's any question. They have enough talent. They bring back probably the best, excuse me, this is Clemson up here. They bring back probably the best backcourt in the conference when Alvarado and DeVoe. Moving on. I've already gone over all these guys, Faxon.
Yeah, and I do have a question for you here.
Yeah.
If you were an opposing team, how would you game plan to stop the Tigers?
How would I guard Clyde? I would go under on all ball screens.
Yeah.
I'd make him beat me from the three. He does a lot of things for the team when it comes to like moving the ball, but I would deny passes because whenever he's having to make decisions, getting by guys, he tends to struggle a little bit. He can do better in that this year, especially with regained athleticism. Amir, I would go under ball screens because when he was most effective shooting the ball last year, it was off catch and shoot situations. When he had 6 last year against Boston College, I think 5 of them were off the catch, Faxon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he had a lot of catch, and a lot of them were in transition too.
Yeah, so it's somebody. He's not somebody who's going to dribble into threes. He's somebody who's going to catch and shoot. So I'm going to make him shoot off the dribble if possible and try to keep him in front. And these two kind of go hand in hand because Amir Sims is going to set a lot of ball screens. So what do I do if I'm guarding Amir? I push up on him, play him physical out on the perimeter, and then whenever he gets the ball on the perimeter, I go full deny on everybody else and make him beat me one-on-one.
In a one-on-one move.
I'm okay with Amir scoring 30 if his teammates have a hard time. So that's how I would guard it.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on all of those because we saw in a lot of games last year, Amir was kind of game planned for, if that makes sense. And there were multiple games where he had under 10 points, but we saw Tevin Mack come up huge, John Newman come up huge in those games because all the attention was on Amir. And we also saw some games last year where Amir had a ton of points and Clemson lost because no one on the floor could do anything else. So I agree with what you were saying there.
I would play John Newman physical. Just to go on to him, I would play him physical and I'd close out short. Whenever he's hesitant in his actions, he's not as efficient. So I would close out short with a hand up, make him shoot a hesitated three or a pull up from mid-range. He does like that shot, but I'm willing to live with long twos. And you also force him right. Has he been working on it? Sure. Is he much better going left? There's no question. High-level athlete if he's going to his left hand. If he's going to his right hand, he's a little bit more hesitant and is not as powerful.
Yeah, and Newman, he does rely on that left hand, and you see him a lot where when he takes someone off the dribble, he'll take it a couple dribbles on the left hand. He'll kind of use that right arm to chicken wing the defender a little bit, and he'll step back, he'll get around that free throw line. Likes that mid range. So if you play him really up physical, you're not going to allow him to create that space with using his arm and get to that spot that he wants to get to.
Yeah. Number 6, I have the U. Starting off with Chris Likes, as we talked about before, he's somebody averaged 16 points a game, 2 assists. He's going to have to be woefully more efficient this season. He's going to have to get his teammates a little bit more involved, like I talked about earlier. This guy right here beside him, Cam McGusty, he's not a freshman. That's a typo. He's actually a redshirt senior. Transferred from Oklahoma. Dealt with injury. Was really good at the beginning of last season, especially the first 15 games. But after he was able to come back, he played through some knee problems, and he wasn't nearly as efficient. Look for McGusty to be potentially a breakout player for the Canes.
Yeah, and with McGusty, we saw with that knee injury, his shooting splits at the beginning of the year were actually pretty good. He was a pretty efficient player, and then once he started playing through that injury, especially from three, his percentages kind of started to dip. He ended the year around 32% from three, which is, I think he's a much better shooter than that, in my opinion, and I think you could see him in that 36-37 range this year.
Well, he was an ACC Player of the Week, I want to say, at the end of December last year. This is not somebody that's going to struggle with a lot of different, he's going to be able to play off other guards that are making things happen, but this is somebody who can get you 25 on a given night. This is a wild card. Amir Brooks, transfer from Cincinnati, shocked a lot of people by sitting out a year before his senior year, moving down to Miami, and then doing just his senior season at the Canes. Somebody who had good numbers at Cincinnati. This is a rim protector. This is a shot blocker. This is somebody that the Canes really need. Canes were second worst in the league last year in rebounding margin at minus 4.1. That's an area that I am shocked about because the Canes have so much size. But another 7-footer, a big, mean, physical little dude, Faxon.
Yeah, and I'm going to be interested to see how they use him on offense, kind of for ball screen purposes, rolling to the rim. If he can have that soft touch around the rim and be able to finish effectively, then he could really be a two-way player that's kind of a difference maker for this team.
Absolutely. And then last but definitely not least, this young man right here, Earl Timberlake, out of DeMatha High School in Washington, D.C. Same high school as Jeray Grant, by the way. Didn't know that, did you?
I did not know that.
Didn't know that. Do you know who Jeray Grant is?
I have no idea who that is.
Oh, man, that's my teammate. We came in together. Yeah, good player. Anyway, long story short, from D.C., high-level athlete, big, strong body, somebody who's going to be able to switch 2 through 4 and really finish above the rim. Reminds a lot of people of who's the guy that came out of Miami a couple of years ago, got drafted by the Spurs, Lonnie Walker from Philadelphia. Same kind of build, same level of athleticism. Timberlake's a lefty, and he probably shoots it a little bit better, but look for him to have a monster year and an all-freshman performance in my eyes.
Yeah, 17, 10, and 4 in high school is impressive at any level, and when you look they really needed that guy to step into that 3 role after Lonnie Walker left, so I think Larinaga's definitely super excited to have Timberlake step in.
And he's really high on likes, too.
Yeah.
Moving on to 5. Who's number 5, Baxton? We got the Louisville Cardinals. This guy right here, biggest wild card in the whole game. Carla Jones, transfer from Radford, rated the #1 grad transfer in the country, averaged over 12 points a game. I think 5.5 rebounds and 5.1 assists. Am I right there, Faxon?
You are. He actually averaged close to 20 points per game, and 25 and 5 was more. And he shot 40% from 3 too. This kid was incredible.
Yeah, really good. And here's the thing: played against Clemson 2 years ago. Whenever Marquise Reed was a senior.
Yeah.
Yeah, played against Clemson 2 years ago. Had 18, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist. And he's not very big, 6'1", 185. 2 years ago, he's 3 for 25 to start out his year from 3. Last year for Radford, shot over 40%. Somebody who's gradually improved the entire time. An Aiken, South Carolina resident, very good player, little undersized. Is it going to be able to translate to the AC? I don't know.
He needs to, and he really needs to be a scoring option for the Cardinals this year, because when you look at all the returning players, you don't have a returning player that averaged 10 points per game for the Cardinals. And if he can step up and even average 15, or maybe even 12, 13 in that range, the Cardinals are going to desperately need those buckets because they don't have a ton of scoring options on this team.
Well, you're exactly right, and he's a perfect complement to David Johnson, a 6'5" sophomore who we've already talked about a little bit. He's a preseason second-team All-ACC player. He's somebody that's going to be able to set up the offense, and he's very versatile in his ways of getting other players involved. Another player that he needs to get involved is this guy right here, former McDonald's All-American Samuel Williamson, a very talented player, might be the most talented player on the roster, Faxon.
Yeah, and then you look, he's McDonald's All-American, 5-star recruit, 4 points a game last year. And a lot of that is role-related. They had Notre, they had a lot of guys on the wing that are in front of him. This year could be a breakout candidate in the ACC.
No question.
Especially depending on, it's just going to depend on the service he gets and how much playmaking ability can come out of that backcourt to get him into favorable positions to score. It's going to be interesting to see because I feel like this Louisville team is, I feel like they always have people coming back, if that makes sense. Like they always have a lot of veterans on their team that you know are going to be really good, like Notre last year, for example. And this is kind of a wild card year for the Cardinals. They could go as high as 3, 4, 5, and they could also probably, I want to say that this is their lowest floor in a while.
Yeah. I agree with you. Samuel Williams, and he could be that guy. He could be a go-to
He needs to step
scorer.
up, and he needs to score 14 points a game this year.
I would venture anywhere between 12 and 14 points. An excellent player, really skilled, showed his ability to put it on the floor, get to the rim a little bit, scores from all 3 levels. Not that that's a great thing anymore. Everybody's won dunks or dunks or three-pointers, but he's somebody that can vary it up a little bit. I put this guy right here, Aiden Igahome, the Irish Hulk. I put him there one reason. Malik Williams just went down for 3 months. This is somebody that the Cardinals are really going to need this coming year, at least until the beginning of February, Faxon.
Yeah, and he got very little playing time last year, if I'm not mistaken, so he's kind of being thrust into that role, getting thrown into the fire with Malik Williams going down. It should be interesting to see what he can provide because I do think he's talented. Still a little bit on that raw side. We'll see how he handles probably being a starter in his sophomore campaign.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm a little hesitatent to give him much credit as far as what he's going to be able to do on the offensive end. But he is a big-time rebounder, a huge body, Fax, and just an absolute beast. 6'10", 245. He's going to have to be a heck of a screener and really needs to focus on the small things because you've got guys other places. You've got a scorer. You've got a facilitator. You've got another potential scorer right here. He needs to do all the little things to help his Cardinals win, and Chris Mack's going to do a good job coaching. We know he's going to put guys in the right spots. This is the guy that they're really going to need, especially on the boards this year.
I definitely agree with you there, and it should be interesting to see because I feel like we know what we're going to get with Louisville typically, and this is a year where I don't really know what we're going to get with Louisville. It should be fun to watch.
Yep. Just to rehash, this is our on-the-list crew right here. Louisville, Miami, Clemson, Georgia Tech. That's our on-the-list crew. And just to kind of go over what we had last week, or the last 2 weeks, all the way through. You can see it. For those of you just listening, Wake Forest, Pitt, Boston College, Notre Dame, NC State at 11, Virginia Tech at 10, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Clemson, Miami, and Louisville. Those are guys.
Yeah.
I like it. Next week we're going to go over the top 4. That'll be the MVP guys.
That should be very fun to see because, I mean, when you look at those top 3, really, it can kind of shake out any other way. And I know how you have them arranged, but we might have a little bit of wavering opinions there, so we'll see.
Well, I think there's some wiggle room. There's definitely some wiggle room. I think that second, I would almost consider North Carolina to be a part of that group because you don't really know. Young guards have a hard time.
Especially after last year, and they don't have a ton of experience and leadership on that team, in all honesty.
Yeah, well, I mean, Garrison Brooks can try to do that, but your best player, typically, or your most important player is a guy with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
And it's got to be somebody who's really going to do it. Do we have any questions, Faxon, coming from online?
Well, I have some questions personally.
All right, we'll do some questions.
I would like to ask you.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick one shot that you would say is the biggest shot of your career, what would you say and why?
I think Maryland was the biggest single shot.
Yeah.
Because we needed that game badly to get in the tournament.
Yeah.
I don't think that was any. I remember for some reason I went like 0 for 5 or 0 for 6 in the first half, and then Oliver came up to me right before halftime ended. He's like, "Hey, just to let you know, you're gonna start for us, and we need you to be aggressive." And I think that was the only time he said that in 2 years because he never had to tell me to be aggressive.
Yeah.
So that was a big one. That was the most exciting atmosphere because they were so into it. And I mean, they had dance mobs and flash mobs and all that stuff. There was I think I ended up that game with 4 threes. This is a side story. Somebody I really look up to was actually behind. Not look up to. Well, you know what I'm saying. Or at the time really looked up to. Was sitting behind the bench. We're in a timeout. I had 9 points before that game winner, and I looked behind the bench. Scott Van Pelt was back there.
Really?
So he was in the second row behind, and I kind of did a double take. I was like, what's up? And he just gave me one of these. And, you know, he's a huge Terrapin guy.
Yeah.
And they give him so much crap and all that stuff. So I saw him. I did a little head nod, even during the middle of the game where I'm trying to be hyper-focused. And I go out there and I hit that shot. Well, after the game, I'm so naive. I didn't know he was a Maryland guy. I made him come out there and take a picture with me at half court.
Really?
On the M.
That's funny.
And I still haven't seen the freaking picture.
Really?
I still haven't seen the freaking picture. If anybody on the internet can find a picture of me and Scott Van Pelt when I'm 19 years old, please send that to me. I haven't seen it since. I'm a little disappointed.
That's hilarious. And another question I had for you was, what was the loudest you ever heard Little John?
Florida State at home, my freshman year, when we went into double OT.
Really?
So we go into double OT. They had a pretty good team. I think it was Tony Douglas, Chris Singleton, African guy, Uche Ochefu or something like that. I can't remember his name. I can't remember the pronunciation. I need to be better about that. But it went into double OT. Trevor Booker hit a massive shot at the end of the first one. And then I hit James Mays hit one after the first OT. And then the second OT, it was just bonkers. It was packed. I have a picture of it. I think I actually set the overtime scoring record at Clemson. It
Really?
Still stands. I had 12. I had 4 threes in the second overtime.
That's incredibly impressive. I'm sure the crowd was, you know, going crazy for that.
Yeah.
You can see why.
Yeah, it was a good one. It was a good one. But before that, we lost to North Carolina at home. And I went into Oliver's office, Oliver Purnell. I was like, hey, you know, I like to be in at these situations. Do you mind? Hey, from now on, you need to put me in. And I was like, well, okay. He kind of shuttered me off like this little freshman. And finally, I think Cliff Hammonds fouled out, and they had to play me. There wasn't really like a choice.
Yeah.
So, and then I went off. And then from then on, I was in for the last 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah, every game.
I mean, you always need shooting.
Well, you have to have shooting. And you have to have somebody that's got the, I'm just going to say it, got the onions to knock them in, to quote Rafferty. You got to have somebody willing to take it. You got to have somebody willing to miss it. That's a big thing, Faxon.
Yeah.
People got to be willing to miss shots. Like when I was playing, I was okay with missing the game winner. It didn't bother me at all. Didn't bother me at all. Is that all we got?
Yeah.
Guys, thank you. That's episode 3. My man Faxon, he also says thank you. He's taking off. Yep. See you later. Guys, we'll be back next week. We're going to talk about the top 4. And then it's almost game week, baby. It's almost game week. We're here. Mississippi State will be the first one. I'm going to try a little something different. Maybe a little bit of a scouting report. I'm going to see what I can do with this thing. It was acting up on me a little bit today, but we're going to get all those kinks figured out. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. This is Let It Fly with Terrence Oglesby. Buy the magazine. East Park Printing did that for me very nicely. Waiting for the final schedules to come out. Buy the magazine. Let It Fly with Terrence Oglesby with letitflywithtO.com. Coupon code QUALK. Hit me up. Thank you guys so much.